Islam is wrong. It has always been wrong. They knew it was wrong when they wrote it. Judaism sought to repudiate the influences which had led to the first exodus at Babylon. Moses was not the first Jew. Genesis is told in the past tense. By the time of Exodus, there had already been Jews in the Holy Land. Well, we know that the Philistines invaded 1,000 years prior, so by then they had already established a claim. In the New Testament, Paul was a Roman, blamed the Jews, and at this time, Islam had not yet been written. The crucifixion threw the empire into a decline. How does this work? Zoroastrianism. See, the Jews tried to abolish Zoroastrianism, and they see Christianity as a revival of it. However, for God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son. The prophecy foretold Elijah has been fulfilled. So, Christianity is the definitive closure of Zoroastrianism. Now, the only blame we can foist upon the Jews is that they're still waiting. So, Zoroastrianism lives through their rejection of it. It's not a cookbook. Protestants think they are God. That's the influence that Islam has in Europe. Yeah, they're raised believing in an all-powerful, almighty, higher power, and one day they snap and it turns out it was them all along. So they reject the laws of the prophets their whole lives, and then they reject John 3:16. There's nothing Christian. They're just terrible Jews. Well, the New Testament blames the Jews, and Rome is persecuting the Near East for 2 centuries about. There's the first and second persecution, and the lines are blurred with the Crusades, but the Crusades were after Islam. Because of these centuries of persecution, which maybe it was more like 4, Islam is written, what's the 6th century, 6th or 7th century AD. Now we've got unholy Christian empire persecuting people in the Near East under the direct influence of the Northern Europeans who wiped out the Roman legions in the time of Christ, right? So who's in charge now? Anyway, they are persecuting Middle Eastern Jews. Anyway, a lot of these people are converted Christians. So they're persecuting primitive Christians in the Middle East. They did have a lot of heretical texts. I mean, for God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son. Period. End of story. It's not a goddamn cookbook. Anyway, so the people who responsible for persecuting the Jews to the extent where they wrote the original prophecies to begin with decided to write their own religion. They called it Islam. And the Jews take the blame because they're like, oh, well, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed. They persecute people for being unclean by the standards of an agrarian, nomadic civilization. I mean, Moses took them through the desert for 40 years, and these people had pottery and farming. So if you engaged in certain behaviors, you were more of a liability than the tribe could afford at this time. So they would drive you off. But you better make sure I did something. I'm, like certain crimes, you're not going to scapegoat me. I'm a trained killer. These will be satisfied. Don't be a dumb Jew. Okay? There has to be a reason. You don't just go around scapegoating and persecuting people for nothing. That means you're either a slave of the prophet or the infidel. You're not a Jew. You're a Muslim. Now, smart Jews only. You're faithful. You love God. You believe in the power of God. Do you not believe in miracles? Because it only happened that once. Like, what do you expect from the Messiah that you're waiting for? He has to come repeat performance for you personally. Islam is ridiculous. I want you to imagine an imperial cohort in the wilderness stopping every traveler to look at their pecker. In the beginning, God set the greater light apart from the lesser. Jews hate fascists. Well, the empire nailed our Messiah to a stick and left him in the sun to dry. We're not too fond of him either. So where is all this flat earth coming from? Islam recognizes no distinction between church or state, and is therefore neither, as of Socrates. The existence of religion implies separation from state. Church is inherently separate from state, or we wouldn't have a word for it. Islam is not a religion. It never has been. The internet is an epoch in communication on the order of written language. A 1,000 years from now, we may regard the pre-internet era much like we now do prehistoric humanity. We stand on the precipice of either a golden age or World War III. A golden age in logic, reason, understanding, learning. These idiots are trying to figure out what to do about the population so they don't have to change 150-year-old labor laws. Islam is a man competing in the Women's Olympics. It is not a religion. What does that mean? It means it's not protected under the Constitution. What it means, it's not qualified for tax-exempt status. They invented taxes. Taxation is different from tribute. I'll go into that in another lesson. Point being, the IRS is in no danger, provided since Islam is not a religion, it's not protected under the Constitution. This is corporate sabotage. mfrodeo.blogspot.com. First, do no harm. Or it's not even your goddamn business, you fucking jinglehead.